and they published their results in the Annals of Internal Medicine. Their only problem they had that because they were using glass containers, they had very high peritonitis rates. But these were the two people who introduced the concept of leaving fluid continuously in the peritoneal cavity. And their abstract, I show you here just to make a point that it was submitted. The title was really kind of a bit little strange. Nobody could understand what they wrote. And this important concept was rejected, was not accepted even for presentation in the meeting. And then Dr. Nolf joined Popovich and Moncrief. Dr. Nolf, having tremendous experience on the science of peritoneal dialysis, they coined together the term continuous ambulatory peritoneal dialysis, or CAPD, and they kind of produced the evidence that CAPD is working. But both the Austin and Columbia, Missouri, where Nolf was working, the problem was with the high infection rate. When my fellow who was working with Karl Nolf, his name was Jack Rubin, came to visit me here, he said, look, they have this fantastic technique, but they have high peritonitis rates. The last thing I wanted to listen about is high peritonitis rates. I had so much worry about peritonitis rate that I didn't want even to hear it. And however, I had the following experience. There was one of my patients who was on the previously mentioned reverse osmosis machine, and she was getting underdialyzed and confused. And she even infused the formaldehyde in herself. Then I converted her to the cycler. She was even more underdialyzed. And then she fell, her face was full of bruises. And I still remember in September 1977 when I was passing outside her room and I saw her in that terrible state, confused and full of bruises. And I said to myself, why don't we try this technique since we have the plastic bags available? The Americans didn't have it. And I gave this order a verbal order to my head nurse who transcribed it, and I will read it here because this was the whole principle of CAPD since then. I said, leave 2 liters of this solution in the peritoneal cavity and run it using intravenous tubing and use 2-liter bags. After this is infused, clamp the bag and wrap the empty bag in the tubing around the patient. So I did not disconnect it. That was the important step. Make sure that the connection of tubing to bag is covered by a sterile gauze. 6 hours later, drain the fluid out by lowering the bag to the floor. At the end of the drainage, repeat inflow of 2 liters of 1.5 without heparin and continue doing the same. This came to known as the Toronto Western Hospital technique for CAPD. I had close to 40 patients doing intermittent peritoneal dialysis, and after I tried it in 2 patients, I offered it to all the patients. I made a deal with them. Try it for 2 or 3 days, and then if you don't like it, go back to the cycler. This was the technique. This was the plastic bag full with the solution. This is the peritoneal catheter. This is the IV tubing. So the fluid would go from here into the peritoneal cavity. This is the empty bag. This is I asked that do not disconnect the bag from the tubing. Just wrap the bag around the patient. This is the bag here, the fluid into the peritoneal cavity. The patient was free to go on for 6 hours. And in 6 hours, the patient had to sit and unfold the bag, the empty bag, and drain by siphoning the fluid. And the only thing he had to do is to remove the spike from this bag, connect with a new bag, and repeat the cycle. And this is, I show this, these are the same slides that I have shown I was invited to show in 1978 in the Contractors Conference in the NIH. And everybody was there, and the director of that program of the NIH was so impressed. He said that this would have tremendous future, and he helped me to get $500,000 at that time, tremendous amount, to do research to promote peritoneal dialysis. This was so popularized, everybody was talking, that even this is a picture that from the Time magazine. The Time magazine wrote, which see the technique. The fluid goes in, the fluid stays around the patient, the empty bag around the patient, the fluid in the peritoneal cavity, then the fluid drains out. This was the Toronto Western Hospital technique for COPD, but in a classical American way, the Time magazine did not even mention neither my name or the Toronto Western Hospital about being involved with this technique. But this was the beginning. The Americans convinced the FDA to approve the dialysis solutions in plastic bags because of our experience, and I was told that it took 9 months, which to their understanding was a record time of getting approval. Now the problem of the science of connectology, and I will show you some samples of efforts we're doing. How can you prevent this connection between the tubing and the catheter not to come apart? So this was what Mr. Zellerman had done, to keep the two parts together. And in this way, subsequently, Baxter came with a Luer lock connector, which I think that was it's the one that we're still using today. How can you remove the spike from the bag without contaminating the bag? So Gabor had made this thing, or even a better thing, this one that you could really hold, put the spike in this holder, so you were keeping your fingers way away from the spike and avoiding any contamination. How can you make these tight connections separate easily? There was this kind of the pliers device.